Derek Sheridan from Rustbelt Basketball Coaches Network. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have a lively group tonight. We have the Rustbelt basketball coaching staff, and we also have with us the infamous Jami Carter, the legendary coach from Anthony Wayne High School, who has taken Anthony Wayne girls basketball to heights unknown prior to her stay. Coach Carter is also one of the more innovative coaches in Northwest Ohio, and I say that for a variety of reasons, not just on the basketball court, but a lot of the things that she is doing in her physical education health classes are cutting edge. We have Matt Moore, the head boys coach at Warsaw High School. When Matt was on our coaches show, Matt and I had a great conversation in regards to Warsaw boys basketball might be the most high-pressured high school basketball coaching position in the United States of America. I do have a special purview on that statement as I grew up in northern Indiana, and that was during the Al Rhodes tenure, and I was an Al Rhodes student as I followed him across the landscape on the clinic trails back when clinics were in vogue. And then we have the legendary Chad Burt, the head boys coach of the Wauseon Indians, who has a winning streak of 17 straight years without a losing season. And I might add, and Chad kind of nudges me when I say this, Chad's winning basketball games, one, in the knuckle dragger of a league, and two, without the world's best athletes. And I think it's also important to add that all three of these people are, and I know I've already talked about Jami, but all three of these people are outstanding classroom teachers, is another reason why I wanted them on our first roundtable discussion. Going back to our coaches staff at Rustbelt Basketball, we have the legendary Hall of Fame coach Dick Crowell, who was in more Hall of Fames than any person I know. Wayne Brooks, who's coached at every university in America and damn near every high school in the state of Indiana as well. Ryan Ripke, who took Delta High School girls basketball from a speck on the map into a real thing. So from pretenders to contenders, and everybody on this podcast, both who are speaking and those also in the audience, can say is not an easy accomplishment. As a matter of fact, it's harder than heck to do that. And then we'll have Matt Brighton on as soon as he gets out of football practice. And Matt's the head boys basketball coach at Delta. He replaced me, and Delta has soared to new heights now that they have a good coach. The coach prior to Matt really messed things up, and Matt's done a hell of a job straightening that mess. So into our sponsors before we get rolling here with questions. Number one, Danny's Cafe in beautiful Rustbelt, Ohio. If you have not been to Danny's Cafe, I strongly suggest that you do so. I do see that we have a couple Northwest Indiana coaches on this podcast, and they are well versed in Bridges Sports Bar in beautiful Griffith, Indiana. But Danny's Cafe is not only a fun place, the food is outstanding, the service is amazing. And now that they have both sides opened up, it is a great atmosphere for collegiate and high school broadcasting as many high school games as they can. And Brad Morris, the ex-star basketball player at the University of Findlay, runs Danny's as he does Maumee Turf, and he is one of the nicest, most hardworking men I've ever met in my life. Game one, more specifically, LJ Archambault. LJ Archambault is the hardest working salesman I've ever did business with. I could go on and on and on with various stories on how LJ bailed me out of trouble on that line when I was the president of Northwest Ohio Basketball Coaches Association, finding out that, or I should say my wife would find a plaque that had a misspelling, and I would meet LJ at the shop and he would make a new plate for the plaque, and it saved us from that embarrassment. Most people who know me know I'm OCD, and having something misspelled or something of that nature was not up my alley. That was something I didn't want to experience. So LJ is one of those rare salesmen who takes his clients in and treats them as if they are family and goes over the top to make sure they are happy. And then lastly, Tom Rose and Grip Spritz. If you are not using Grip Spritz, if you are still using the old shoe to court traction apparatus with the sticky pads, I highly recommend you evolve into Grip Spritz. You do not have to order new sticky pads. Grip Spritz is much more affordable. Now that I'm giving private lessons, our kids prefer grip splits well more than they do the older models. And by the time I get to gyms, there's dust everywhere. And so having only 30 minutes with each kid, I don't necessarily have as much time to sweep the floors as I want. So grip splits has been a blessing. Our first topic of conversation, preseason preparation. The floor is yours, people.
I guess I'll we say preseason, and to me, the off season slash preseason ends, or I guess maybe begins when your season ends. I think we're all I talk about Nick Saban, that the old story goes that he was thinking about his following season on the bus ride home from winning a national championship one year and kind of placing, who's going to fit in where, how his new recruits are going to play, this and that. And I think that's every head coach. It's probably every coach of any sport that, when you get knocked out of the tournament, I think that's our nature. We're just always processing, how are the JV kids going to fit in? What are the new roles for the varsity guys? Obviously, you're going to lose some seniors typically. And so I think that we're all, like I said, to me, the day our season ends, we're thinking about the following season. Like I said, that's just in our nature. And so I guess I equate the preseason to, like I said, just that. And I think for us, obviously skill development is huge. Um, and the old adage that your kids are going to become shooters in the off season and so forth. And in my opinion, I don't change a lot with shot form during the season. We work in the off season, but I think by the time we get them in the season, it's who they are is who they are. So our biggest thing in the off season to me is role development. Um, Trying to get our new guys, and even our returnees. Again, they're going to have different roles the following season. So I think role development for us is huge. I don't think you're selecting your team in June, and yet I think we're all sort of, again, trying to put some pieces of the puzzle together. I think we're all trying to figure out whether our new guys can play at the varsity level, whether they can play at that speed and that physicality. And I think, part of the summer shootouts, camps, whatever we attend, open gyms, summer leagues, whatever you're doing, I think a big part of that part is trying to figure out, again, whether your new kids can play at that level. We don't do much X's and O's. We are, I guess, maybe known for doing a lot of X's and O's during the season, but we really don't do a lot of X and O in the off season. I'd rather see how the kids play without structure, see whether they can defend. And I'll be honest, and I tell our kids all the time, I'm more of an observer during the summer. And hopefully the kids step up and kind of coach themselves. And I think that's a big part of, developing that leadership with your returnees is hopefully they can step up and sort of police the team. But I do more observing in the off season, and as anything, I guess I'm specifically talking than summer. And then obviously as the season approaches, as we are now, I probably run less open gyms than most teams, or I run less individual workouts. And I always say, and even during those, I don't speak much. I always say they're going to hear my voice from November to February every day, and a lot of it. And so I try to say as little as possible. I want it to be a case where, when I speak, I don't want them to, I think a couple of us are teachers. You guys know by the end of the year, maybe your voice doesn't mean quite as much as the beginning of the year. And I don't want the quote unquote end of the year to be at Christmas time. I want my voice to be heard really starting in November and hopefully carrying through February, March, whatever that tournament run takes you. And so, like I said, I don't say much. So continuing into the preseason, I think the attitude is practice is real. Once your practice starts, setting the tone for your practices, the effort, the expectations of that. But I guess if I could summarize, we're defining roles the best we can and trying to figure out how kids fit in. We're instilling offensive and defensive philosophies. And in my opinion, sometimes, and probably have a chance to talk more about that as this goes on, breaking some of the bad habits of summer offense that we see. And again, just kind of setting the attitude of the program. So it's a fun time, but it's also a time I say as little as possible, to be real honest with you. So might be a little bit in the minority, but that's sort of something that we've, it's, what is today, September? We haven't even started open gyms yet. We'll do 2 a week until the season starts. And then obviously kicking into high gear once the season starts. But like I said, I want them to be as enthusiastic as possible on that first day of practice. I don't want them to feel run down. I don't want, oh man, here comes, we got to go back to the gym. I just want them to be as enthusiastic as possible on day one. So, again, we're probably guilty of doing less than most teams. But that's all for a purpose. And it's something that really on day one of practice has worked out well for us over the years.
That's good. That's one of the reasons I have such a diverse group of coaches on here tonight, is I knew we'd have a lot of different philosophies. There is no right, there is no wrong. And especially with the cast of coaches who are on the other side of the screen for me, meaning that you have all been so successful. And that by itself lends to automatic credibility. And preseason, my teams, I used the preseason checklist that we're now selling as part of the Rustbelt organizational tools that are available on our new website. But I had a list that I called the I don'ts. And over the summer, watching the kids play and looking at how they performed the tail end of the previous season, I came up with a list of the I don'ts. And the kids would cringe when I would say that. And basically what that meant was, I don't want to be talking about this stuff in December. Get it fixed. This is your time to get it fixed. And I tried not to ever have a list of I don'ts that were more than 4. And that was something that resonated with a lot of the kids who, or I should say, teams I coached. And I know Wayne and Coach Crowell and all of you guys, I should say, have a lot of really interesting things you've done in the preseason, hence you being invited to be here. So don't be shy. Jump in and get both feet in the boat.
Well, to piggyback off what Coach was saying earlier, I think it has a lot to do with, what type of kids do you have in terms of, are they playing other sports in the fall? So the fall is always, for me, has always been a difficult time trying to do any X's and O's, because you got kids playing football, playing tennis, running cross country, whatever they're doing. So the fall has always been, even after Indiana started letting you actually coach basketball in the off season, was pretty much a time of year targeted towards, individual development and conditioning. When the season ended and I had my parent meeting at the banquet, March, April, whenever that was, I always asked for the month of June. Let me have the month of June. You guys can plan whatever vacations you want in July. If you're getting ready to play football in August and all that stuff, give me the month of June. That's my month to be a dictator in the off season. And I'm going to be a dictator again come November. That's when the X's and O's happen. And, the spring and the fall has always been kind of tricky. Now, maybe if you're at a school with no football and things like that, maybe a little easier to do the X's and O's. But I always targeted the month of June and the season to really do the hard 5-on-5 X and O stuff.
In Indiana, we are allowed now to practice 16 times in the fall. And so that was a game changer in so many ways at the schools I've been at. We don't ask any full sports guys to be part of that. So I'm very distinct about what off-season versus preseason looks like. And so when our preseason starts back up, I agree with Coach. June is us. July, go be a kid, go be a 2-sport guy. So we've already gone 4 sessions of our 16. And so I'm very intentional about carving out time. We get in our season and we look at all the things that we don't think that we do well, whether it's rebounding or whatever we don't feel like we allot the time that we need to. And we're very intentional about including that in our fall. The other thing that we try to spend an enormous amount of time on is we're big on teaching actions. And so we spend a lot of 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 time. We play 4-minute games, half court. We don't check it up. It's kind of the FIBA style. That has been a really good way for us to institute the actions that we're trying to do. Now, we're going to play a lot of zone this year, so it is also a way for us to include some of our man-to-man defensive principles in the fall of playing. So we are trying to play much more probably than we have in the past. I look at we have 27 kids coming right now that don't play a fall sport. Majority of them are going to be varsity guys, but I look at the group that I have as if it was my team. And so I will invest the same amount of energy trying to get a kid that's probably going to barely make the freshman team as I would a guy that's going to be a starter for me in the varsity, because I want my coaches and I to look at every kid as an opportunity to grow ourselves as coaches, because once you get a team that is seasoned, it's a lot easier to coach and to teach things with guys and players that understand the process of what your program wants. So I really challenge our staff to, when you have a group in your breakout session that isn't very good at something, that you got to coach them. Everybody wants to coach Luke Bricker, right? Luke Bricker is going to be an all conference, all state kind of player for us. I get to coach Luke Bricker, right? That's why I get to be the head coach. You got to kind of cut your teeth coaching guys that might not have the same skill set or understanding, so that you can become a better teacher of the game, specifically in the fall.
Good evening, everybody. I have to first admit that I coached in the dark ages. And I mean that seriously. We had a lot of rules. Most of them we kind of went along with. But we had to take a much different approach to preseason, I would say, organization and conditioning, and than a lot of you can, because we could not spend time with our players in the off season. Every once in a while, we would end up in the same building, but for the most part, we were pretty much divorced from our teams in the summer. We always took April and August off with no basketball activities. That always seemed to work out. If they wanted to play on their own, that was fine, but we really didn't do anything. One luxury I had was I never had too many football players or fall sport athletes. We were able to, our teams are made up of strictly basketball players, which I will admit was quite an advantage. But when school started, after a couple of weeks, we would have open gyms. But in open gyms, we had to let everybody in the school come. We couldn't hand pick anybody. So open gyms were crowded, but yet they were the best we could do. Now, my approach to preseason conditioning is we worked strictly on basketball skills. I know a lot of guys like to get, and ladies, excuse me. I have a lot of respect for women's coaches, believe you me. I see a lot of basketball players running outside, like distances. I never saw a basketball team or game played on a cross country track before. So we did most of it inside. We did a lot of agility. And by the way, this was all within the framework of the rules. But we started October the 1st with conditioning. They were all basketball related. We used jump ropes. We used medicine balls that were the size of a basketball. There was no rule against that. I even checked one time. And we did things that would get them ready for the game of basketball. And the only thing that we might do is we do slide drills. And sometimes those slide drills might take the form of a press. I mean, I was told early on that run and jump drills were good for conditioning. So every once in a while we utilize, that type of a thing. But we didn't overdo it. But our guys played basketball in their sleep, and so I had an advantage in that respect. So, but we always prepared for basketball only, and had a picnic in the summer most of the time. And they loved that. But we didn't have leagues. We didn't have AAU. That's what it was like. And believe it or not, Toledo basketball still was pretty doggone good back in those dark ages. Thank you.
Derek, can I hop back in here real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say part of our preseason and maybe lack of 5-on or I guess X's and O's stuff is I've been very, very blessed. Through my 17 years of coaching, I was actually just trying to off the top of my head. I think I have had 3, we talked 7th, 8th grade, freshman, JV, varsity. I think I've had 3 coaches that are not Wauseon people, that either didn't play for Wauseon or that I didn't coach. And I try to be very intentional with that. And so our junior high coaches, Mike Webster is the head of the spear. Has been with me for all 17 years. And then we've had JD Douglas, and we've had some great junior high coaches. And, you hear horror stories, or I hear horror stories sometimes about some of the clash that happens between a varsity program or a high school program and a junior high program, and it doesn't always mesh. I've been very blessed that my coaches have always preached what we preach. They use the same verbiage. We run a lot of the same sets. And so when they get to the varsity level, the X's and O's are pretty well taken care of. Obviously, we're adding here and there, we're tweaking here and there, we're hopefully fine tuning, but we're certainly not reinventing the wheel. And so, again, it's been, and I kind of joke, one of the three that I'm speaking of that are not Wauseon people is Dave Storr, who's been my assistant for 17 years, and he actually just last year celebrated his 40th year with Wauseon basketball. He happens to be a Montpelier grad. And so he's one of the ones, and he's probably he's more Wauseon than any of the Wauseon people because he's been with us for 40 years. So, like I said, we've got great sales people, and I think we would all agree that part of being in our shoes, you got to sell your program. You got to get your kids to believe in what you're doing to have any level of success. And I think it starts at a young age. Jami, I nose around, and I think I'm not a real social media guy, but Twitter and all that stuff. And I love what you're doing with your young girls. And I think it's, again, and we're all doing the same thing or similar things, I think, but maybe Jami's a little more social media, better at it than some of us. But I just think that's a huge part of it is the sooner you can sell your program, the sooner you can get in front of your kids, the sooner you can get on a first name basis and, that they know you. I just think that's a huge part of being in our shoes. And like I said, I got to give a ton of credit to our junior high coaches who have really done an amazing job at selling our program and developing our players. So when they get to us, the X's and O's, as I said, are we got to fine tune them and we got to tweak some things, but they honestly do a heck of a job. So like I said, I had to throw that in. And speaking of female coaches, Ashley Oyer, somebody in Northwest Ohio, Ashley Schrock, played Division I at Cleveland State, is now my JV coach. And I shouldn't. This is going to be on the internet, right? So I won't say. I'm going to say I should have hired her a long time ago. She just got done. Geez, with her second or third year with us. She's just does an unbelievable job with our kids. She's been she was the girls head coach at Wauseon for a while. Just understands what it takes to be a head coach and understands. And there's so many times that I say, hey, I got to do this, got to do that. And she got it done. Already did it. So she's been awesome and an awesome addition to our staff also. But I've been very, very blessed with great coaches and great assistant coaches that have done a hell of a job of selling our program. So like I said, I had to throw that in there because it makes my job a heck of a lot easier.
We're going to move on unless anybody else has a pointed statement regarding preseason. Okay, let's move on to thoughts regarding the shot clock in high school basketball, which is a touchy subject. This is one of the few things now where coaches really get into some healthy debate. Some are staunchly for, some are staunchly against, and we're here to find out what your thoughts on the high school shot clock are.
Well, first of all, I think time and score is an art, and a lot of coaches believe that, and some not so much. And to have a shot clock and not have strategy with the end of quarters I think it'd be a devastation to high school basketball. I mean, that was my style too, but taking pride in those things. But just like, for example, time and score. I'm a big Minnesota Viking fan, and yesterday they were ahead 20-7, and the clock's running. The Vikings are ahead, and we kept hiking the ball with like 28 seconds and 25 seconds on the game clock. I'm like, let that thing go down to 3 seconds and hike the ball. You got the lead. The clock is your ally. But I think that would take a lot of fun strategy away. I spent a good hunk of my coaching career in Southern Indiana, and if you ever coach down there, you know that end of the quarter situations are so important. Understanding that, hey, not only do we get to take the last shot at the end of the second quarter, but we got the possession arrow to start the third quarter. So I think it'd be a crime to take that strategy away from coaches. I love that part of the game, and I hope that never happens.
I happen to think that it's not needed. I like the idea of giving the underdogs an advantage, and if they have to put up a shot within a certain time, and I'm talking about the teams that aren't as loaded as some of their opponents, with the shot clock, I think that would take away from their strategy. This way, the way it is now, they have a chance to run some time off, to run sets. It gives them a chance to win. And I think if the shot clock is put into effect, I think that's going to hurt a lot of that strategy that coaches like to use.
I had a situation a few years ago where I played a league rival before Christmas in a non-league game, beat them by 48, and I was a pressing team, and we just pressed them till they squealed. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, we played them in a league game, and they held the ball, and we beat them by 5, 27-22. And if that's the only way that they can win, or if that's the only way that they have a shot to win, then I agree. I feel like we shouldn't take away that opportunity for them. And also at the same time, I feel like that made me a better coach, because it was until I stepped down. Every time I went up against this team, I had to plan for it. And we had to get creative on how we were going to pull this team out of their four corners. And I just kind of felt like it stretched us as a coach and as a coaching staff, and it made us better. But I agree, to me, give those lesser talented teams a chance. I actually think it would, if we force those teams to take shots within 35, 45 seconds, whatever it would be, I kind of think there might be more blowouts because of that. So that's my take.
I absolutely see that. I'm a little bit indifferent, I guess, in the sense that if you truly watch a high school basketball, let's hypothetically say it's a 35-second shot clock. I don't think the majority of possessions last 35 seconds. Just in the run-of-the-mill games. Obviously, if strategically one team is, as you guys have talked, I think those are the outlier situations, right? I mean, if we're talking 22 games during the year, and I see she's got her tech person in play too. No. But I think those are the outliers. I think the run-of-the-mill games, most possessions aren't going to last 35 seconds. I think we're, as Coach Brooks talked about, I think the quarter end of game, I think, is where it would have the biggest impact on most games. Are you going to play for a 2-for-1? Again, let's hypothetically say it's a 35-second. You're down 2, down 3. Are you going to foul? Or are you going to play the possession out? I think strategically that's where it's going to come into play. Again, I'm not talking about the outlier games where teams are holding the ball for an extended amount of time. I also don't know, again, the higher ups, whoever they may be, I would be curious to see what their the true reason behind what their why they want to make this change. And in my opinion, if it's to make quote unquote better basketball, whatever their version or definition of better basketball, I just don't see it. I tend to think potentially that the shooting percentages are going to go down. Possibly turnovers are going to go up. You guys know as well as I do that when the clock hits 10, 12 seconds, some of your guys are going to be more panicky. They're going to feel rushed. I think that's going to lead to potentially more turnovers. I think shot selection, obviously at the end of clocks, strategically it's on us to put our guys in position and girls in position to make plays at the end of the shot clock. But the reality is, whatever your set is, a high ball screen, or whether you're whatever your X and O set happens to be, if it's defended, I think it's going to lead to a bad shot, which I think is going to lower shooting percentages. I don't know. Like I said, I just don't think it's going to, like I said, have the impact that again, whoever's making these decisions is going to have in a positive way. That being said, I guess part of me is curious to play in the shot clock setting. I know some of us played, a lot of you guys played in college also, as I did as well. And it definitely does change the nature of a possession mentality at times. We all talk about winning possessions. I think if you have a 35-second shot clock, you could really truly talk about winning possessions as we all do. But again, I don't think it's a situation where it's going to drastically change gameplay with 4 minutes to go in the first quarter. with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter even. I just don't think it's going to drastically change gameplay. That being said, I've never coached in that situation, so I guess I can't have a super intelligent answer on it. I'm just speculating like a lot of other people probably are as well.
I've coached in a game in a tournament. It was 23-21, and the Indy Star did an article after that game, because if you just looked at it at face value, all the shot clock people where they held the ball, it was a really good played game. Like, there were great shot selections and good decisions, and we didn't turn it over. And so I'm a traditionalist, so I would love to have the game stay how it is, but I'm also a realist in the sense that the game evolves, and I think part of great coaching is great teaching. And so being able to teach, I wouldn't like to see the shot clock any lower than 45, to be honest. That's what it introduced at the collegiate level. I'm with Coach. I don't think a lot of possessions go 45, but I also understand, situational basketball. And so part of that is, can you teach your guys situation? There was a time when you couldn't call a timeout from the sideline, right? You can now, you had to rely on a guy on the floor, and that has changed. And so I think for us as coaches, style of play matters. And that's typically when people talk about the shot clock, that's what they get to, is the style of play. I think there could be some advantageous reasons to have one, but I think at the end of the day, it's no different. And I don't think it impacts the game any more than the new free throw rule does. I think the free throw rule has a massive impact on how the game is played. I don't think the shot clock would have as big of an impact if it was at 45, the way that people maybe think that it does.
I would be interested to see how teams defended a team that ran a deliberate style against them.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I read a lot of stuff. This is one of my things now that I'm not in coaching. I blame the teams who are on defense. You got a team stalling, like that ridiculous game in either Wisconsin or Minnesota where it was like 7-5 final. Well, what in the hell's the defense doing? Go get them. You sit back there and let them do that. You're just as at fault as the offense. I hate to say fault. Maybe that's the only way the offensive team or that team's could be competitive. I don't know, but no one seems to ever say anything about the defense.
First, I have to tell you, Coach Burt, I have young assistants who tweet out all that stuff. We're about the same age, so that is not my jam. Just a really, like you said, and you kind of beat me to the punch. Good assistance is really important to our success. As far as a shot clock, I guess I'm with Coach Burt, where I really don't know, whether we would or wouldn't. I think the strategy behind it would be great. We love, to strategize with our kids. We have really intelligent basketball players. I don't think it would affect us either way. But other teams have tried to do what Coach Ripke had done over at Delta, where they'll stall, and it's also a league rival that does that to us as well. But I have a unique. I look at it a different way. I coach, or I teach officiating at the high school for OHSAA, and my fear is that it's going to be a little too much, and for various reasons. One being, who's going to run the shot clock? We can't even put people on the sidelines. Oh no, we do. We're blessed, but there's a lot of schools who aren't, who really rely on volunteers or whatever that may be. Secondly, we have this huge need for referees that we're trying to educate, and those poor children are probably not ready to officiate a game, be able to know the rules, the application of all of it, and then we throw the shot clock at them. So I think that's where I don't know if I don't disagree or agree as a coach. I look at it from a different angle, and I worry what that will do to the high school game.
One more quick story sorry to interrupt, but I think sometimes perception isn't reality. And what I mean by that is this is, it was 16-17 season. We were fortunate. We made the state Final Four, and had a really good team. We played Columbus Eastmore Academy in the first round. And they actually have a kid in the D League, Tavion Kinsey, right now, 6'4" guard. But they were 6'4", 6'9", 6'8". And I can remember talking to people about them, scouting report, and you would have thought we were playing the Lakers. They were really, really good. But the long story short of it, we were ahead at halftime, 13-11, and ended up winning the game. I think it was 42-35. But I can remember one of the reporters after the game, asked me, he said, well, coming in, did you guys talking about how we were stall balling it and this and that? And what I said to him, I said, we didn't talk not 1 second about holding the ball, not 1 second. I said, the difference is that, during the season, most of our games, we can make 3, 4, 5 passes and get a great shot. We could run a set and get a great shot. I said, these guys who make 3, 4, 5 passes, they are in us with a 6'4" kid. That shot wasn't there. So 3, 4, 5 passes became 8, 9, 10 passes. And it might have looked to an outsider like we were playing stall ball. And I tried to convince him the best I could. I said, no, I promise you, we were trying to score. We just couldn't score it. But as Coach Moore, I think you said, I forget what you said, the halftime score, one of the scores of one of your game, 27-22, I think you would, no, maybe that was you, Ryan. But it was the same idea. You go back and watch the game, and I think it was 13-11, 13-12, maybe at halftime. It was a really clean, well-played game, not a lot of turnovers. If that's not your style, you might have left at halftime or even before. But I think if you truly appreciated basketball, you say, okay, this is kind of an interesting contrast of styles. So I think sometimes that perception of teams playing stall ball, I don't know that that's reality. I think that's maybe just a team really with defined roles that, they want to get their top scorer to really the cleanest look possible, and they're not going to settle for a shot with their number 4 or 5 option. Whereas again, I think somebody might say, man, they're holding the ball. We need to get a shot clock in. But that's just that coaching strategy and in the offensive strategy. I think we're all trying to employ to put our kids in the best position possible. Where I still maintain it doesn't take the 35, or as Coach Moore said, maybe we start at 45, whatever that number is. It's not going to take that long generally, but maybe it does. And I don't, from an offensive standpoint, I want to feel like I have to rush a shot at the end of 35 and shoot a step back 24-footer because they're 3-2-1-0. I would like to employ whatever offensive strat, whatever that means to me. So again, I think sometimes perception doesn't always match reality from an outsider standpoint.
I agree. I look at this sort of the same way Coach Carter was talking about, and that's who's going to run the shot clock? Who are we going to get to run these things? Who's going to train them? Who's going to train the officials? Elongation of a high school basketball game is going to be at a minimum 15 minutes. There's always going to be an issue with the shot clock, always. And it's going to have to take someone who's very confident and someone who's got alligator skin, because the crowds, they're going to be screaming at this poor person. So it's going to take a special person. Look at an NCAA game. Whenever they have a shot clock issue, it takes forever. And these are people who are trained and get paid a lot of money to run those shot clock apparatus. So that's another question I have. Getting committed, credible people who will be there for a JV girls, JV boys, freshmen, all of these games. Ohio, we play so many games during the week. You're going to kill people running them ragged. It's going to take a lot of people, and it's going to take a lot of preparation, and it's going to take a lot of money out of the athletic department's budget, because people are going to need to get paid for this. They're going to be very important jobs. You're going to have a lot of issues with delayed start to games. There's going to be the layup line, and there's going to be an issue with the shot clock. And this is going to be something that's going to be real when it happens. Take it to the bank. You talk to any administrator right now, they hate basketball for one reason. They play a lot of games and they have to be there. I'll say one more thing, and Wayne and Chad, maybe Jamie, I don't know if Matt's still on here, Ryan knows. My advice to people who are concerned about the shot clock is take a page out of our old playbook. We played so fast, and we wanted to get a shot up so fast that it never mattered. The first time Wayne and I coached against each other, the score at halftime was 9-7 when he was at South Bend St. Joseph's. My point is, everything I just said is a lie. We didn't. Yeah. But I'm telling you, from my perspective, some of the schools I coached at, if I was forced to tell some of these kids that, because our practice sessions, everything we did offensively was geared to being sure with the basketball so we could play offense longer than the opposition wanted to play defense. So I don't know how I'd do this, but that's my 2 cents.
I'm curious, how many high schools does Ohio have? Like
860.
800.
Okay, so we have 407, I think. We just revamped our format. Now it's based on percentages. So at Warsaw, we have 2,100 students. We were previously in the biggest class, the 4A class, which I think is the 1A in Ohio. We've remained in that, but now the cutoff is the top 20%, because what you were having was those private schools would somehow always figure out what that number was, and they'd be in 3A, right? And so, again, I think, basketball is basketball. And all I can do is coach the kids that I have. I left a school in Indianapolis that just won the state championship a year ago because I was tired of having to recruit my own kids to stay in my program. Went to a place where it's a community. That's what I like. I can grow my program. We have youth stuff. So, one day maybe I'll coach in Kentucky and get to experience that. One day maybe I'll coach at college again. But I don't get caught up too much in the levels, and I got to coach the kids that I got. They're coming through the door. We're going to do the best we can with it. And I'm not really going to worry if you're breaking rules or not. We're going to follow the rules the right way.
Speaking of Kentucky, unless this has changed recently, and I've not stayed in the loop of what's going on in Kentucky, they had the best system that appeased both sides of the whole class basketball thing, because during Christmas break, they had the class tournament. I think at one point they had like 1A, 2A, 3A, and then a private school tournament. When the season was over, they had the traditional, everybody's in the same tournament. So you kept both parties happy. With all the tournaments that go on in Indiana Christmas break, there's no reason Indiana couldn't have done that. I'll give you an example. When the vote was made for Indiana, every school had a vote. The principal was given a vote, and often the principal would give that to the athletic director. My athletic director wasn't even from Indiana, and he casted one of the votes to go to class basketball. So how many of those situations happen across the state? I could write down a list of probably 70, 80 guys I knew that wanted class basketball because they got tired of going to Newcastle for the sectional or going to Richmond for the sectional. We want the class basketball. Well, guess what? 2 years later, you're not winning your 1A sectional. You're gone. So I've never been a fan of class basketball. It's hurt attendance in Indiana. You got teams traveling 95 miles to play on a Tuesday night in the first game of the sectional. For example, Eminence for a while had to go all the way to the North Vermilion to play. So never been a fan of it, but I think the compromise could still happen. Will it? Probably not. We could have the class basketball tournament at Christmas break and then go back to the traditional one after the season ends.
Well, I know Jamie's got another meeting coming up, but I want to get Jamie's take on this before she has to leave. Jamie, tell us what your thoughts are on the Caitlin Clark phenomenon and what that's meant to girls basketball.
Well, I would say it's not really even just Caitlin Clark. It's just the opportunities that our girls and our young women are being able to experience. I mean, I know I'm aging myself and Coach Burt, but
you're the youngest people on here, so you're okay.
Good to know. I didn't have the opportunities that, my daughter, she's coaching right now at the collegiate level, but just the opportunities for our young kids, those going out of high school, they go, come to college. We had a former student come in and talk to our kids the other day, which, by the way, going back to, since you couldn't hear me, the preseason preparation, I do a gamut of a lot of what you guys had already mentioned. But I do want to add, we try to get our kids to a collegiate practice at least once. And then we also have former students come in, whether it be like for last week was a former basketball player who played D1, but it could be anybody. Just like Coach Burt said, they're sick of hearing us. And so we try to get them from all angles kind of thing. But, just back to Allison, just seeing the successful person that she's become, and what basketball has given to her and the avenue that it's given to her, it's really cool to see. And I'm grateful to be a part of it too, because I think it's great. And so I would say it's Caitlin Clark, but it's you name your person. And it really is name your personality, right? You know, some people like Caitlin Clark, others like, prefer other basketball players, but they're all role models. And it's just great. It's great to be a part of.
Coach Moore's got a meeting at 7. Jamie Carter and Matt, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that you'll come back
Absolutely.
and take
Thanks for
part
having
of it. Absolutely. It's great seeing you again, and have a great rest of your week.
Good luck this season, guys.
You too.
You
Thank
too.
My take on the Caitlin Clark thing is I think it's an awful lot like using Angel Reese. I think it's a lot like when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came into the NBA and basically saved it from going bankrupt. Before Bird and Johnson had shown up, there was a huge drug problem in the NBA. Attendance was at an all-time low. And the quality of play was suspect at best, and there was not very much enthusiasm in the league. Well, number one, as a elementary physical education teacher, I've got so many little girls wearing Caitlin Clark uniforms or T-shirts, which in my career, I haven't seen that before with any female athlete, except for maybe some of the soccer girls, which I wouldn't know who those girls were because most of them, I think, play overseas in the FIBA stuff.
FIFA.
you.
FIFA, there you go. I'm seeing a lot of enthusiasm for Caitlin Clark with younger girls. I just watched the Fever play yesterday. The gym's packed. And I will say this, and I'll shut up about it. One of my friends, Jerry Pettigrew from Wisconsin, is the Wisconsin High School Basketball Coaches Association director. And they got Caitlin Clark to come to the clinic, and she stayed for 5 hours after she spoke and signed autographs. 5 hours. That's something special. Unless you guys know something that I don't know of any other athletes right now who are doing those things.
I started coaching girls basketball in 2011 and 2012, and when I went from boys to girls, I really started watching the college game. And to my shock, it was really good basketball, and I enjoyed watching it. And I think, as we'd always, we coaches would always joke about going to these coaches clinics and listening to these Power 5 D1 coaches talk about the sets that they like to run, and we're all writing down the sets that they run to their alley-oop for their 6'10" guy. Well, we don't have, not too many of us have too many 6'10" guys that we can run alley-oop plays to, but if you want to watch good basketball that really kind of translates to at least high school boys basketball, I always thought that the college girls game really did that, because it was similar type of athleticism. Obviously, probably not as athletic as the high school guys, but it's still pretty good basketball. Now I haven't really the Caitlin Clark phenomenon I haven't really followed it to the WNBA, but then again, I don't watch the NBA either. So professional basketball, I just don't watch a whole lot of. But I think what she did for women's college basketball, and obviously she's doing for WNBA, is just exposing the women's game to a whole lot of people that wouldn't have watched it to begin with.
Agreed.
Well, since I'm old, I belong to some groups of old guys, and we never talked about basketball at all, especially the NBA. But when she entered the WNBA, now we talk about when their next game is, and we talk about the previous game, because what she has meant to women's basketball. And she's certainly taken her lumps, but she's responded well, and she's gained the respect of a bunch of us old codgers.
My parents, now they will watch the Pacers. I don't watch NBA basketball very often. My mom and dad never miss a Pacers game. But right now they are so into the Indianapolis Fever. If Michael Sheridan is going to watch a girl play basketball, it's going to have to be awfully damn good basketball, or else he's not going to, it's not even going to be on his radar. He's not going to know about it. And I want to say this, when Ryan said girls basketball at the university level, I've said this for a couple years, and people look at me like I have genitalia growing out of my forehead. But I mean this in my heart of hearts. If you want to see full court man to man, run and jump, ran the way it's supposed to be ran with perfect timing. And I'm not talking about BS, one trap, and then everyone scrambles like a shotgun just went off in South Toledo. I'm talking about they are running and jumping in accordance to when the ball's in the air, and they rotate and they rotate and they rotate. And very rarely do you ever see two people on the ball, because the person who jumps the ball, the original defensive player, backpedals out of that and now becomes the deflector. Watch Ball State University's women. It is the best full court run and jump I've seen, besides Cornell University, which I know everyone again looks at me like I have hair growing off my tongue when I say this, because Cornell guys are known for spelling bees and building rocket ships. They're not often referred to as great basketball players. But when Brian Earl was the head coach at Cornell, he had some nights he'd play 7 who ran a run and jump press that was beautiful to watch. And they were the most unathletic college basketball players maybe on the surface of the earth, but they ran it right. Ball State girls, just as good. Wisconsin girls, if you want to see a team run flex, high flex across the bottom volleyball line, high flex, watch Wisconsin women's. They run it until the shot clock is down to 5 or 6 seconds. They do a great job. They also do a great job of executing quick hitters into the flex. And then lastly, Indiana University girls basketball, they do the best job of running Dan Peters' old 5-out motion offense, where there is not very many, if any, screens on the basketball, and they run it to perfection. And it's hard, and I hope someone on this disagrees with me. It's hard for me to find college basketball that I can watch and not hate the game. There's a lot of basketball I watch, and it makes me ashamed to be a basketball coach. And these 3 universities I just mentioned, and I don't know if these coaches are still there or not, and that's my fault. But I do know this: if so-and-so and so-and-so are playing, and I know I want to see a buffet of ball screens and a smorgasbord of turnovers, and Ball State's playing, I'm watching Ball State. And I can say the same with Wisconsin or IU, and I'm talking about the women's teams there. So that's my take on it. And what Ryan said triggered my brain, which is dangerous in the first part. But I don't know, guys, thoughts on any of that? I don't want to kill your evenings, and I know we got topics we haven't covered, and I can definitely save those for next time we do this. I would like to start doing these on Monday evenings. These are things that I want to probably not post on our website, but put up for free on YouTube. And yeah, it's promoting Rustbelt. I get that, but I think it's also important that people hear basketball coaches like you, like all of you who are on here now, and get your perspective, because I meant what I said. There's a lot of people right now who are moving away from the game of basketball because it's not aesthetically pleasing. I'm talking about guys now, not girls. It's not aesthetically pleasing. It's ugly. And it's one small step away from savagery when you look at what goes on in the lane. You know, the traveling, all that stuff. And maybe I'm speaking more about the NBA than I am the college game. But unless someone's opposed to this, why don't we put the other topics that we haven't covered on hold? And if you guys would like to start doing this on a regular basis, please, pretty please with sugar on top, tell me what day and what time works best for you so we can have a consistency. That's one thing I have not been able to establish yet with our coaches show, because all the coaches have things going on and I've got to meet their schedule. But if this is something that we can have, maybe it's bi-weekly, that would be fine, but something on a regular basis where people know they can get this at a certain time, it's going to, I think, help our game, number one, most importantly, and two, it's going to help the Rustbelt cause. You know, there's still people out there who don't know that our back to school sale to get a 1-year full membership, which means you have access to everything, is $35, which is highway robbery. But when we started this, we said we want to make something affordable for coaches, for high school coaches It's affordable. Everyone's getting their budgets cut. And so I'm going to stick with that. But it's driving me bonkers when I talk to people and say, well, I had no idea that they can get it for $35 until October 1st. So anything you guys can do to help me spread that information would be greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. The other thing I need you to help me with is when you talk to people, because I got 5 different emails today asking how come I stopped making In Ted's Honor. I didn't. When we got the website up and running, we switched to a new server. And now I've got a lot of people who are not getting those emails from me, number one, and two, the newsletter, because they're going directly to their spam folders. In a nutshell, if you can help me out with those things, and we've got almost 4,000 people on our YouTube channel now. Give young coaches an avenue to where they're learning from you guys and having someone talk to them. Everybody here's an education, and you're telling them things that nobody else is telling them. And I think right now in our game, that's just absolutely imperative.
All that being said, I'm not going anywhere if you want to keep talking.
No,
I'm
I
gonna
don't want
be-
to kill your evening. I don't want this to be Derek Sheridan is the only freaking person talking.
Neither do they. They don't.
No,
wanna
they
hear-
don't. And no one has ever considered me likable, and no one has ever considered me fun to listen to.
The assisted living bus schedule and see what I can do so I'm available to
Good,
participate.
good. All right. Well, I'm not going to kill your evenings. My wife has a terrible case of COVID, so I've been tasked
Oh, boy.
with driving into mommy because right now the worst thing that could happen in Western civilization is that her classroom is not ready for her substitute tomorrow. And if that classroom is not spotless and perfect, and those lesson plans do not look like St. Joan of Arc herself created them and put them exactly where they should be, I am not sure we can continue with Western civilization. The sun will not come up. It's going to be a travesty for mankind. All right, guys, I'll talk to
I
you
will be in
soon.
touch.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Yeah,
See you
see ya.
guys.
Go.
Hey,
Bye.
guys.